Let's begin with the top stories you need to know. The polls in the United States continue to show Democratic candidate Kamala Harris and Republican Donald Trump running neck and neck, both nationally and in most swing states, as the race to the White House has entered its final stretch. Kamala Harris is holding a final campaign rally in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, while Donald Trump appeals to his base in Michigan. More than 78 million people have already voted in the US. Global markets are bracing for turmoil ahead of Tuesday's US presidential election. Wall Street banks are pausing internal software updates and booking nearby hotel rooms for traders who will be closely watching the results, while trading activity is likely to spike as results come in. In Spain, hundreds of civil and military emergency workers are searching shopping centers, garages and underground car parks for more victims of floods in the Valencia region that have killed at least 214 people as public anger mounts over Spanish authorities' handling of this disaster. The 5th edition of the Vietnam-India bilateral army exercise has started in Ambala cantonment. Joint drills will be held till the 23rd of November in Ambala, as well as Chandi Mandir military station, with an increased scope of activities as compared to previous editions. This is the first time personnel of the Army and Air Force from both the countries are participating. North Korea's UN envoy has said Pyongyang will accelerate a build-up of its nuclear weapons program just days after it test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time this year at a moment of rising tensions with the West. And Rolls-Royce unveiled its first electric vehicle, the Spectre, priced at a minimum $420,000. It's the first step in the luxury car company's plan to become all-electric by the year 2030. Some reviews say it feels like the previous 120 years have been leading up to this moment. Well, we have an update for you on America's early voting numbers. They have ticked over the 81 million mark, and both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump are holding multiple events as they try to convince voters they should be the next US president. The US presidential election, as you know, may take days to be officially called, but analysts could have a good sense of how the race will turn out within hours of polls closing. In fact, as early as 6 p.m. on the East Coast, election watchers will be able to glean important bellwether trends like whether Vice President Kamala Harris made gains with suburban voters and moderate Republicans. But our team of reporters is tracking the latest developments on the ground for you. We have Gauri Dwivedi joining us live from Washington, D.C. at the moment, and Natasha Israni is with us from Philadelphia, I'm told. Let's go across and get you an update from Washington, D.C. first. Gauri, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are zigzagging across crucial swing states. Many political watchers are saying this race may actually end up being the closest in U.S. history. But what's the mood in Washington, D.C. where you are?
The race is set to be as close as possible, Parmeshwar, but Washington, D.C. is probably the deepest shade of blue ever. In the last election, there was just 4% votes that Donald Trump polled, because this is an area that goes to the to Democrats completely. So to that extent, I am here, but it's a very inaccurate indicator of what Donald Trump's popularity is outside of Washington, D.C. And he's fairly popular, which is why the race has really gone down to the wire. Having said that, you're right about the fact that they are zigzagging through the country, but particularly focusing on those swing states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, another very important state where the two candidates are in fact focusing. All eyes now on the voting that takes place tomorrow. I've been speaking to both the camps, and they've been very clear that it's now about ensuring that their registered voters make it to the polling booth. They are now not looking at undecided voters. They are not looking to convince those on the other side. They just want to ensure that their voters come to the polling booths. And it all comes down to a very basic math, Parmeshwar. If more women are able to come to the polling booth, Kamala Harris's chances are that much higher. If it is the men folk who step out of the house to vote more, well, you know which way then the election is headed. So all eyes now on whose voter actually comes out to the polling booth. It's just about 12 hours to go in Washington, D.C.
Well, after months of frantically fanning the swing states to pick up as many undecided voters as possible, it all comes down to Tuesday night. Thanks so much, Gauri, as always, for joining us with that update from Washington, D.C. We will revert to you for regular updates. Let's also get an update from Philadelphia, where Natasha joins us from. Natasha, Kamala Harris has her own rally in Pittsburgh. Donald Trump has spoken in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and sounded the alarm about voter fraud on the eve of the election.
That's right. This is a big point of the Donald Trump campaign, to talk about voter fraud and to also point out that they have lawyers in place all across the country watching this closely, as well as volunteers. Now, the other side of the aisle, the Democrats say that this is fear mongering, that so far that there has been no credible evidence of voter fraud on ground, as there wasn't in 2020 either. But this is from the Trump playbook, that they highlight issues or non-issues or half issues and make them bigger. And this has actually been creating a level of uncertainty on the ground. We did speak to Philadelphia election commissioner earlier today, the city commissioner, and she wanted to reassure the voting public that everything was in order, everything wasn't safe. In fact, where I am in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia is Pennsylvania's largest city in one of the most crucial swing states. There has been heightened protection of voting booths, including the main warehouse in Philadelphia, where the counting will be done. And when the commissioner spoke to us earlier, she again emphasized that things were in place, that when the polls open tomorrow, that there is no fear of anything, or of any wrongdoing. But at the same time, we also spoke to the Republican side, and we spoke to a representative of the young Republican group in Philadelphia. And he told us, in fact, he was having meetings with lawyers even after the interview with us, and he emphasized that they have concerns about voter fraud. Now, according to the election officials themselves, voting has been going really well. As you pointed out, early voting numbers are quite high, still not as high as 2020 during the pandemic, when there was more mail-in ballots, but they're still quite high. And when those polls open November 5th, for a lot of people, it's really going to be watching really closely. As everybody points out, this is a close race. And it might all just come down to this particular state where I'm standing right now, Pennsylvania. And that's one of the reasons why Kamala Harris has really spent the entire day here, holding 5 rallies. This will be her last rally. Behind me, on the steps of the Philadelphia Art Museum, is where she's going to make a final pitch. And this is really a get the vote out campaign, which is why she's going to have Lady Gaga joining her. There will be Oprah Winfrey. There will be other hip hop stars as well. We spoke to some people who were heading to the rally earlier, and they were very excited. There are thousands
Natasha,
of
we
people
will, of course,
flooding
revert
in.
to you for regular updates from Philadelphia. Do conserve your energy, because we need you for the next 40 hours, giving us ground updates from right there. Thanks so much, as always, for joining us. Polling aggregators on Monday had the gap between Trump and Harris at as little as 0.1%. But, well, the winner-takes-all electoral college system in the US means the presidency will be decided by the way the 7 so-called swing states fall, and the race is much closer there, as Gauri and Natasha are reporting. But in terms of election mechanics, as you know, Americans do not directly vote for their president. Instead, they vote to determine the composition of the electoral college, which elects the president. Natasha caught up with her Democratic leader, Will Gross. Here's what he had to say about the race that's neck and neck.
Pennsylvania is the biggest prize in swing states with 19 electoral college votes, and Philadelphia is its largest city. Now we are joined by Will Gross, who is the leader of the 2nd Democratic Ward in Philadelphia. Your candidate, Kamala Harris, has spent the entire last day in Pennsylvania and will culminate it at the concert in Philadelphia. Why is Pennsylvania so important, and why is she here till the very last day?
Pennsylvania incorporates two large urban centers, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, but it also includes many rural areas in the middle of the state and other parts of the state. And I think in a lot of ways it represents the country in a lot of ways, demographics-wise. I think Kamala is here primarily because not just about the electoral votes, that is obviously very important, but the fact that we have people from different parts of the state that have very different experiences in their everyday lives, and the fact that her campaign is truly speaking to everyone in this state, and how her campaign is working to help not just folks that are doing okay, but folks that are in the middle class or working class folks that are farmers, etc. These are folks that are going to benefit from a Harris-Walz election tomorrow, and that's why I think she's here.
You know, Philadelphia has been traditionally blue. At the same time, they have lost registrations amidst Democrats, and we have seen a rise in Republican registration. So what is it, why do you think that is happening?
I think that a lot of this it comes down to messaging. I think it comes down to the reality of which party is fighting for which demographic, which group of people. I think currently we have two very different candidates, one who is truly going to help working class and working people and working families, and one that's going to help folks that are in a different class, in a billionaire class. And I think the first represents Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, and the second represents former President Donald Trump.
Well, you've heard from the Democrats, but also hear from the chair of Philadelphia Young Republicans. Here's what they had to say to my colleague Natasha Asrani.
Philadelphia, a traditionally Democratic city, is seeing young Republicans make Republicans. And to give us a wider perspective on this and the rise of young conservatives here in Philadelphia is Matt Lamorgese. He is the chairman of the Young Republicans of Philadelphia. Matt, thanks for joining us a day before Election Day. How are you feeling?
We feel great. We're very happy. We've seen great numbers across the board. Voter registrations. We've in the last 4 years, to give you an example, we started out with a deficit of about 800,000 voters. That number is now below 300,000. We've seen 1,000 new registrations a week here in Philadelphia, which is significant. And we're seeing a lot of support among young people, too. We're seeing, with young males, it's basically a 50-50 split between Kamala and President Trump. So we're very happy with how all of that's going.
Do you think that split is going to be good enough for him to take the state, given that women do come out in large numbers to vote? And why do we have that split in the first place between men and women, and especially younger men and women?
Well, do I think it'll be enough on its own? No, I don't think it'll be enough. But I think when you take the gains that he's made across the board, he's made huge gains in the African-American community, he's made huge gains in the Hispanic community, and he's making these gains among young people as well. I think when you take it as a whole, that will be enough. As far as women voters, yes, they do turn out. But again, this is a different dynamic. The Democrats count on these voters, particularly in the African-American and Hispanic communities. And we are seeing these gains. Not that he's going to win in those communities, but he's going to do significantly better, I think, than traditionally.
Meanwhile, a Pennsylvania judge has ruled that Elon Musk's daily $1 million giveaway to swing state voters can continue with just hours to go before the election. In fact, some have called the sweepstakes a scam that violates state election law and asked that it be shut down. Meanwhile, Professor Alan Lichtman, the so-called prediction professor, who has accurately predicted 9 of the last 10 elections since 1984 in the US, stands by his presidential prediction of Kamala Harris winning in the 2024 election race to the White House. Here's a sneak peek.
Well, joining us now ahead of the US elections, an election which is being seen with bated breath, not just in America, but around the world. Alan Lichtman, he's an American historian. He's known as the presidential prophet or the election Nostradamus. He's got 10 of 11 elections right since when? 1984. He joins us now. Mr. Lichtman, wonderful to speak to you. Thank you very much for being with us here at NDTV. My first question, recent trends suggest a mixed picture with some polls showing Kamala Harris leading or tied in several key states, while others indicate a close race or a slight lead for Donald Trump. What is your sense of where these elections are headed?
You should take all of these polls and do with them what the great philosopher David Hume said you should do to works of superstition. Consign them to the flames. They have no predictive value, and they're all well within the margin of error. In 2016, when I predicted Donald Trump, which did not make me very popular in 90% plus Democratic DC, where I teach at American University, all of the polls were going in the other direction. In fact, the most eminent compiler of polls, the Princeton University Consortium, gave Hillary Clinton a 99% chance of winning. That's why my keys to the White House are not dependent upon these horse race polls, but they look at the fundamentals that drive American presidential elections, that it's governing, not campaigning, that counts. And I've not changed my prediction since I issued it 2 months ago on September 5th.
Kamala Harris, right?
I predicted, yes, we're going to have Harris, a new path-breaking president, the first woman president, and the first president of mixed African and Asian descent, kind of foreshadowing where America's going. We're rapidly becoming a majority-minority country. Old white guys like me, we're on the decline.
You know, it's interesting. You did say that it's extremely close right now. I think everybody agrees on that one point, and that you're well within a margin of error. Are you certain that you're right? If there is a margin of error at play, some would suggest it could go either way.
I don't suggest it can go either way. My predictions are definitive. I can be proven right or wrong because I tell you who's going to win. And I've been right since I predicted Ronald Reagan's election in April 1982, nearly 3 years ahead of time, when 60% of Americans said he was too old to run again. And retrospectively, in development, I developed the keys in 1981 as a result of analyzing every election since the horse and buggy days of politics, the election of Abraham Lincoln in 1860. So the keys are incredibly robust. Could I be wrong? Of course. I'm a human being. Any human being can be wrong. It's always possible.
Sure.
That something so catastrophic could change 160 years of American history patterns, but I don't think so.
Mr. Lichtman, there's discussion around shifts in demographics like suburban voters, young voters, how issues like abortion might be influencing voter turnout and preference. Are there any shifts in voter demographics specifically which you favor, you know, either Harris or Trump? I mean, you believe Harris. So do you believe that, you know, Harris doing well in these elections or winning these elections is because of a shift in voter demographics?
I don't base my prediction on voter demographics. You cannot accurately predict an election by trying to break it down into individual voter groups. I use the analogy of your cup of tea. You pour sugar in it. You learn nothing by trying to follow the individual sugar molecules, but you can learn a lot from simple integral parameters like sweetness and density, and that's what the keys are all about. But let me say one thing about changing demographics. As I said, we are rapidly becoming a majority-minority country, and minorities are the base of the Democratic Party. That means Republicans are battling against the demographic trends in this country. They can't create more old white guys, but that's why they're so desperately trying to limit the votes, particularly the votes of minorities, through all of these lawsuits and, you know, new rules and regulations making it harder to vote. It's, you know, a rational, if reprehensible, political strategy.
Now, even though the 5th of November is election day in the United States, there's a good chance that this story won't end there. For starters, it's very possible that we won't know who won the election until days, if not weeks, after election day, leaving the door open for uncertainty. And with the political rhetoric escalating in recent years, experts actually fear that the more political violence could be in America's future. But this report highlights what happens in the race to the White House after the 5th of November. Listen in.
On November 5th, every election season, The US air crackles with anticipation. The nation holds its breath, caught in the whirlwind of democracy. Here's what unfolds in this dramatic saga. Polls close and the hush of uncertainty blankets the country. Voters anxiously await results, their fates hanging in a balance. Election workers, fueled by coffee and adrenaline, dive into the monumental task of counting ballots. A process fraught with tension and suspense. As the night deepens, the first waves of results trickle in. States light up on the map, red and blue battles playing out in real time. Twitter explodes, pundits speculate, and hope flickers like a candle in the storm. In battleground states, margins are razor thin, and every vote feels like a heartbeat. Days turn into weeks as the results are certified. Behind the scenes, election officials work tirelessly, verifying votes and ensuring integrity. In contested states, lawyers gear up for potential challenges, ready to navigate the labyrinth of legal disputes. Tension mounts as the clock ticks. Every hour, every minute feels like eternity. Fast forward to December, the appointed electors gather, each one a pivotal piece in the electoral puzzle. With the nation watching, they cast their votes, their decisions shrouded in intrigue. Will they stick to the will of the voters, or will surprises emerge? January 6, 2025 dawns, the day Congress meets to count the electoral votes. The atmosphere is electric, a theatre of democracy in action. Politicians clash, tensions rise, and the stakes are sky high. Will the outcome be a smooth transition of power, or will the ghosts of division haunt the capital? Finally, the moment arrives. January 20th, 2025 is more than a date, it's a spectacle. The air is thick with emotion as the President-elect and Vice President-elect take their oaths, their voices echoing against the backdrop of history. Cheers and jeers blend into a cacophony of hope, fear, and promise as a new chapter in the American story begins. In this dramatic aftermath, the nation grapples with the implications of the election. It is a reminder that democracy is not just a process, but a vibrant, tumultuous journey filled with possibility. The stage is set, and the world watches, captivated by the unfolding drama of the American spirit. An NDTV Bureau Report.
Well, news and updates continue in a moment right after this very short break. Don't go anywhere.
Stay informed and entertained with the new and updated NDTV News app. You can watch all our channels live, listen to podcasts, read breaking and exclusive news from around the world and more. Download the NDTV app today and get access to the best journalism and storytelling on your smartphone or tablet. The NDTV app. News that matters to you.
We have the power.
So we're going to fight like hell.
Stage is set for the battle of a generation. 2024 is not just an election for America. It is a turning point.
With the stakes higher than ever, it's a showdown of ideologies with deep divisions from the right to the left.
Every vote matters as critical issues take center stage. Your voice could change the future.
Join us for exclusive insights. Stay tuned, be a part of the story, be a part of NDTV.
New day, new show, a new experience.
Start your day with the news, not views.
We bring you stories that matter
and impact your life.
News that informs and keeps you ahead.
From Maximum City, Mumbai,
to the seat of power, Delhi,
NDTV brings you the best breakfast show.
breakfast news on NDTV, 8 a.m. every day. and welcome to India Sense, where I speak with global opinion makers.
The United States has made a strategic decision over the last 20 years to move closer to India.
A $7 trillion economy seems a perfectly conceivable number.
If you want to be a national party, it's that you sort of accept the way the world is rather than want to endlessly hark back to how it was.
Welcome back. The Indian Army has successfully completed patrolling to one of the patrol points in the Depsang region of Ladakh, following a consensus between the Indian and Chinese troops last month over patrolling arrangements in Demchok and Depsang. Let's get you a quick update from Spain now, where hundreds of civil and military emergency workers are searching shopping centres, garages and underground car parks for more victims of floods in the Valencia region that have killed at least 214 people, as public anger mounts over Spanish authorities' handling of the disaster. Heavy rain, in fact, pounded the Barcelona area earlier over the weekend as well, leading the regional government to issue civil protection alerts and also cancel all local train services. Flights have also been affected, but there are fears that the death toll could rise as the relief efforts reach previously inaccessible areas. And finally, Rolls-Royce unveiled its first electric vehicle. The Spectre, priced at a minimum $420,000 is the first step in the luxury car company's plan to become all-electric by 2030. Some reviewers, in fact, say it feels like the previous 120 years have been leading up to this moment. As always, thank you so much for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. We'll keep tracking the latest updates for you. Do stay tuned.
We reached an agreement on patrolling. We have gone back to where the situation was in 2020, and we can say with that the disengagement process with China, you can say, has been completed. The understanding, to my knowledge, is that we will be able to do the patrolling which we were doing in 2020.
I now request the Honorable Prime Minister to launch NDTV World and address the summit.
It was the grand launch of NDTV World by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. NDTV World, as he laid out his vision for the India century at the NDTV World Summit.
ऐसी सदी जिसमें भारत के प्रयासों से दुनिया में स्थिरता आए.
In the presence of those who are shaping our future.
मेरी तरफ से आपको ढेर सारी शुभकामनाएं हैं.
NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
तालियों के साथ हम स्वागत करेंगे आदरणीय मोदी जी का.
छत्रपति शिवाजी महाराज की.
घोषणा आणि जनतेचे पैसे लुटणं.
कट कमिशन आणि करप्शनला आमच्याकडे थारा नाही. त्यांचा परिवारवाद आमचा महाराष्ट्रवाद.
महाराष्ट्रामध्ये 1,75,000 जागा रिक्त पण का भरत नाही? राज्याची जनतेच्या घमाच्या पैशाची तिजोरी लुटण्यासाठी हे सरकार आहे.
पूर्वीच्या सरकारच्या काळामध्ये निधी देताना त्यांना असं वाटायचं की त्यांच्याच खिशातले पैसे चालले. शेतकऱ्यांना मोफत वीज देण्याचं काम आपल्या सरकारने सुरू केलं.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South.
Hello everyone, you're watching Breakfast Show on NDTV. I'm Radhika Ramaswamy joining you from Mumbai studios. We also have Divya joining us from Delhi studios. Divya asked to go before historic US elections, Indo-China patrolling after border agreement talks, and Delhi pollution woes unfortunately continue. So all this and more coming up in the next 1 hour.
That's right, Radhika. Of course, the run-up to the US election, it's very neck-to-neck as far as this battle between Democrat Kamala Harris and Republican Donald Trump is concerned. But, you know, the results will be out soon, and that's what we're going to be covering the entire elections. But first, let's just get you the headlines. And Trump and Harris race comes down to the wire. We're talking about that final push ahead of Election Day in the United States. Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris and the campaign in the battleground state of Pennsylvania. It's the final day of campaigning for the candidates, and the polls suggest it's a historically close race. However, some reports are suggesting at the moment that Donald Trump is leading.
NDTV's extensive coverage in the US, all eyes on US presidential race. NDTV tracks the crucial 24 hours, extensive coverage and precise analysis.
Delhi's air quality in the severe category. We're talking about over 400 points in at least 7 areas of the national capital. Overall, the pollution count is close to 400. What steps will be taken? Well, there is going to be a meeting in regard to that. Will GRAP 3 be initiated? Because the parents and students are waiting for holidays to be declared because it's very smoggy to go outdoors.
And also coming up today, Supreme Court's big verdict on private property. Can government take away your property? That's the big question. Supreme Court is all set to make its decision today.
An army is full-fledged patrolling at Depsang is the patrolling that has resumed after what we saw that took place in Galwan. So after over 4.5 years, patrolling has resumed.
And Prime Minister Narendra Modi slams the Brampton temple attack, calling it a deliberate attack, saying it is a cowardly attempt to intimidate diplomats.
Let's get you our top story, and that's all eyes are on Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. That race, which is very neck to neck, and the next 24 hours are very, very crucial, not just for the United States citizens, but for the world. Both are campaigning in the very crucial state of Pennsylvania, besides touring several swing states. While Trump is aiming to make a huge comeback to the White House after his awful exit in 2020, it's Kamala Harris who's posing herself as a history maker by aspiring to become the first woman president of the country. Now, it's the final day of campaigning for the candidates, and polls suggest that if it is like we've discussed, it's a historically very close race. But both Harris and Trump are holding multiple events as they try to convince voters who should really be the next US president. At a rally in North Carolina, Donald Trump announces that he intends to place 25% tariffs on all Mexican imports if they don't stop migrants from crossing the border. So, Radhika, that problem that Donald Trump has forever had, you know, he spoke about making that wall between the border of US and Mexico. And, you know, he's always spoken about immigration and migrants especially coming in, and those illegal migrants coming in through Texas.
Certainly, immigration had been a focus area as far as Donald Trump is concerned. Now, Kamala Harris focusing on battleground state of Pennsylvania, and the pair will both hold competing rallies in Pittsburgh later today. More than 81 million people have already voted, Divya. And as per a latest poll, about 49% of respondents said they would vote for Donald Trump in the upcoming presidential election. The poll showing as the Republicans hold a 1.8% vote lead over his